everything changes.
Hey, what is up, guys? I'm Matt Bergstrom, aka DevMattB, and welcome back to the DevMattB channel. Today, I'm gonna go through my second part of study tips for college. And if you haven't seen the first one, make sure you check that out right now. It's a very good video, gives you a couple of tips about how to study for subjects like math, physics, economics, and all number type subjects. But in this video, we're going to cover fact type subjects. Now, to reiterate, if you forgot what fact type subjects mean, or if you didn't watch the previous video, fact type subjects are the subjects that you need to remember loads of facts in just by reading a lot of pages in your course book on the internet or anywhere really, and show on the test that you remember all these facts and can put them together in a nice way. Now, these fact type subjects can be history, geography, religion, and for me, database technology, organizational theory, anything that you need to remember a lot of things in and then combine all of these facts to come to conclusions or insights or argue for side one and side two and grab different perspectives about a subject. All of these types of courses or subjects are fact type subjects. I believe that there's two keys to achieving a good grade and grasping a fact type subject. And the first key is, of course, memorization. You'll have to remember a lot of facts and you need a strategy to do that. Some of us don't have naturally good memories, so I like to summarize things with infographics and categorize each part of the course. So if you got a course book that's like 500 pages, there's obviously going to be different categories or themes going on through the book, and just divide those categories just like in the number type subject. Divide these into categories and then summarize the different sections of each category. So maybe you got 5 or 6 different sections in one category. So make 6 pages of summarization for each section and summarize that entire category through these sections, and then do the same thing for every category. So let's say you got 6 categories going on, which is quite a lot, and you got 6 sections in each category. Well, you got 36 pages of summarization to do, which can be quite a lot. But if you got a course book on 700 pages, go from 700 pages to 36 pages, that's pretty impressive. And you can really remember a lot of things through summarizations and infographics. So you can essentially remember the entire book through these 36 pages. And that's what I try to do my very best at, and it worked very well for me when I did my exam in my Organisational Theory class. And I'm going to show you guys a little bit of examples of how I summarized that course and how well it worked for me, and what I believe are good things to have in your summarizations. But first, let me get into the second key of how to grasp and get good grades in a fact type subject. And I believe that is connecting the dots. So once you memorize all the categories and the sections in the categories, you can really connect the dots between the categories and get this overall understanding of the course, its meaning, and why you're studying it, and what the uses of this information and knowledge are. And once you get that rolling in your head, you'll make all kinds of connections in your brain and really start to understand the depth of the subject. And that's when you get some really great understanding going on, and it goes into your deep memory and you'll remember it for a long time. But now let's get back to me showing you guys how I did when I summarized my organizational theory class. So I had this course, I think it was half a year ago or so, and I don't know how many pages this is, but it's quite a lot, and some pages are more basic than others. But as I said, I like to use infographics and figures to remember things. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about timelines and how I believe that it helps you connect the dots. So let's just get into it and get started. So here you can see a cover page, which is the categorization of these sections that are coming after this. So I got some basic fundamental knowledge that you need to know before you dig deep into this subject. So I basically just made a couple of summarizing pages that were sections that, some basic understanding of the area which this subject was focused on. Now, once you got this into your head, well, you could continue to learn the more deeper things of these subjects, which I'll show you in just a second. So here's a timeline. I like timelines because it helps you show, in history, for example, timelines are great. It helps you go from some century to another century and really just get some notes along the way and how the history of whatever you're studying has evolved. Now, it doesn't always have to be just for the history subject itself. Sometimes you need, for example, to know the history of organizational theory. What started organizational theory and then what it has become and evolved into in the later years. And this can give you a great understanding of how something started and how it evolved, and also give you an idea of why it evolved. And maybe you can start connecting some dots to what happened during those years that could have sparked this evolution of the subject. So, for example, in the beginning of organizational theory, it was very much focused on structure and hierarchy because it was mainly about leading military. As time passed along, we started evolving into something more humane that more organizations used. It wasn't just the military anymore, it was companies of many kinds. And the evolution of this was connected to how society was evolving as well, and how we were becoming more open and transparent through the globalization of the world, really. And also the human rights movements has a couple of connections in this, and all those parallels are very useful to have because it not only helps you remember the timeline, but it also gives you a lot of ideas on what you can write on the exam when there's a question regarding the timeline or regarding a certain era or phase in whatever subject you're studying. And to have a lot of points or data to connect to your subject is always useful and helps you create these amazing parallels that can give you extra points on these fact type subjects. Moving on, I'm just going to skip into another category. Here we got I don't know what it's called, but it's like it's a letter combination that helps you remember all the different aspects of something. And I find these very useful to create a word that helps you remember several things in a course or in a subject. And here it says kakamoko, and it helps me remember knowledge companies and how they work. So companies like Google and Apple, and yeah, a lot of things can be summarized with just a word that helps you connect all the different aspects of a specific area in your course. Here's another category. It's called leadership and strategy, in Swedish, of course. And I got some big letters going on. I like to draw. It helps me study longer and also helps me remember better. Some figures and some divisions of connecting areas within a specific section. So for example, this is a SWOT, and it explains how a SWOT works and what you can deduct from a SWOT. A SWOT is a strategy tool and helps you evaluate the situation of a company right now. And it's a very useful tool and is used within big companies that really need to step back and abstract the situation of the company, because it's hard to evaluate a company situation when it's so big, like as big as Microsoft or so. But yeah, the point of these many figures and summarizations really is that you get to remember more things. So this helps you with the memorization, and it also helps you connect the dots between the categories and the history when you use timelines and so on. But what I really want to get to, and what I think is important when you study fact type subjects, is that you repeat the summarizations many times before the exam. That's what helps you memorize everything. So, as I said, when you start to connect the dots and really grasp the depth of the subject and can draw many parallels to the different categories and the categories between, like the parallels between the categories, that's when you really start to understand the subject and it really goes into your deep memory. But before you do that, it might take a while before you remember everything within the categories and can really start drawing these connections, because most often you don't get to connect the different categories and the knowledge really when you read about it. It's hard to connect the dots when you're trying to just take in the information. The connecting of the dots most often happens when you're not studying, when you're at the gym, or when you're taking a shower. That's when the mind can move freely and really use the knowledge and the input that you've given it and start drawing connections between the knowledge and what you're learning, really. That's when the magic happens. But how do you come to that stage? How do you get in so much information in your brain that you can start drawing the connections between the information? I do it by producing these summaries at least 2 weeks before the exam. So I try to produce them continuously. So I start with the fundamental knowledge, and I read about that for 3 or 4 days, and I make summaries of each section in the fundamental knowledge of the subject. And each day I make sure that I repeat every summarization that I've done so far 1 or 2 times. So producing the production of these summarizations can take approximately 4 hours a day. You know, you read it, you draw it, and it's all summarized and good to go. And then after that, it might take maybe half an hour to go through the material 1 or 2 times. So that gives us 4.5 hours a day to study towards this subject. Now, once you've got the fundamental knowledge in, you keep going deeper into the subject and start summarizing all the other categories in the book, and you keep repeating the entire summarization pile that you have once or twice a day, because this pile is going to get bigger. So the time you spend on repeating it might be between 30 minutes to 45 minutes when you get really into it. But the magical thing is, once you've repeated the old summarizations like once or twice a day for 4 or 5 days, it's gonna be in there. Like, you don't even have to look at the paper anymore. You can virtually redraw the entire summarization page from your mind. You don't have to have it in front of you anymore. You can just draw it anywhere. Give me a blank canvas and I'll draw it for you. That's the attitude I want you to have about every summarization page before you go into the exam. So the goal is, after 2 weeks, you've produced every summarization of every category for this book, and you've gone through the accumulated amount of summaries every day, once or twice a day, and you're 2 weeks in. It is a lot of work to start off with. You got a lot to do, but once you get closer to the exam, the workload gets lighter and you don't have to read as much anymore since you've repeated all your summaries as many times. I mean, it could be up to 14 times after 2 weeks. So you know a lot about the subject and you remember a lot, and you also have read through so much information that the work is starting to thin out and you don't have so much to do. And that's the good part, because once you get closer to the exam, you don't want a lot to do. Why? Well, this brings me back to my point about connecting the dots. As I said, the connecting of the dots does not happen when you read the material. It can sometimes happen when you read the summary of the material, but most cases it happens when you're not actually with the material. It's just ideas that pop into your head when you're in the shower or when you're at the gym or whatever. So the magic is, if you produce all the summaries and repeat them during the first 2 weeks, when you're, if you're at the first week, 3 weeks from the exam, and you produce all the summaries and repeat them after 2 weeks, well, you got an entire week where you can just read your summaries and just ponder about the subject and try to grasp the depth of it and really just connect the dots. And that's when it really goes into your deep memory, as I said. And this is the goal of the study technique, really. And I know what you're thinking. It sounds like a lot of work. And it is. And especially in the beginning, it's a lot of work. You know when you get started that you'll have to do this for quite some time. You'll have to read a lot of material and you'll have to summarize a lot of material. But it's actually quite fun to summarize things, especially when you use infographics and use colors and draw figures. It gets kind of relaxing and it's not as bad as you might think. Also, you don't have to do this to the extent that I propose you to do it, but if you want the highest grade and really want to grasp the knowledge of something because you're interested in it or you just want to achieve a good grade, well, try to follow this pattern as much as possible and send me a message after you've done it. Tell me how it went and I'll let people know if it works or not. It definitely works for me. I'll have a hard time believing it doesn't work for someone because it's such hard work that I find it hard to believe that it won't work out for people who try this method. But hey, I'm just a guy. Tell me if it doesn't work and I'll tell my viewers that I'm sorry, it doesn't work for everyone. Just dial it back a little and apologize if I've been lying to you. But as I said, I don't believe that this won't work. Trust me. So do try this out and save your summarizations afterwards, because you never know when you'll need the knowledge. And it's always fun to have these summarizations of courses with you. And if not, it can actually be useful for friends. You can always hand this over to them and you can explain the summarizations to them and they'll probably grasp the subject nearly as good as you can. Of course, they can't grasp it exactly like you do because they work in another way and your summarizations may not work for them and they may not understand every notation or figure in there, but it can definitely help a lot of people out. So do save them and try this method out because it definitely worked for me, so it might work for you. I think that's it for my college study tips for fact type subjects. Hit me up if there's anything that's unclear or something you didn't understand and you want more information about, or if you just got a general comment. Comment below or send me a DM. I'm open for conversation. I'm always happy to have an intellectual exchange between people. It can evolve me and as a person, and it also can make you grow. And I think that's what it's about, really. Help each other grow and spread the good vibes and the good knowledge. Well, if you're this far into the video, congratulations. I hope I was mildly entertaining as well as informative. Make sure you leave a like below if you found this video helpful. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video.